Former Test referee and ex-IRFU referees manager Owen Doyle has issued a stark warning to rugby's governing bodies, insisting that the sport risks losing its best officials unless it takes a far harder stance on the growing culture of abuse directed at referees by players. Doyle's intervention comes at a time when disciplinary cases involving high-profile players have become increasingly common, with recent incidents reinforcing concerns that respect for match officials is eroding at the elite level. In his view, the issue is no longer isolated, nor is it confined to a single country or competition. Instead, it represents a systemic problem that threatens the integrity of the professional game and, crucially, the future supply of top-level referees. The growing list of flashpoints, the latest controversy centers on Ireland and Connacht center Bundee Aki, who earlier this week was handed a 4-match ban for disrespecting match officials following Connacht's United Rugby Championship defeat to Leinster. While the precise details of the exchange were not fully aired publicly, the disciplinary panel deemed Aki's conduct serious enough to warrant a significant suspension. That sanction followed a similar case involving Connacht and Ireland winger Mack Hansen, who was banned last year after an emotional outburst during a post-match press conference. Hansen's comments, aimed at the referee, crossed the line in the eyes of the authorities and highlighted that criticism of officials is no longer limited to heat-of-the-moment exchanges on the field. Even more high-profile was the case of Johnny Sexton, whose reputation as one of Ireland's greatest players was blemished when he was punished for confronting referee Jocko Paper following the 2023 Investec Champions Cup final between Leinster and La Rochelle. Remarkably, Sexton was not even playing in the match, yet approached Paper and launched a verbal tirade that resulted in disciplinary action and widespread debate. For Doyle, these incidents are not just individual lapses of judgment. They are symptoms of a deeper cultural issue that has been allowed to fester. Not just an Irish problem, while Ireland's players have recently found themselves at the center of disciplinary headlines. Doyle is quick to stress that this is not a uniquely Irish failing. Across the professional game, referees are facing increasing levels of dissent, backchat, and attempts by players to push the boundaries of acceptable behavior. The number of bans for verbal abuse and dissent has risen, but so too has the day-to-day pressure placed on officials during matches. Players routinely question decisions, surround referees, and engage in ongoing dialogue that blurs the line between communication and confrontation. According to Doyle, this constant chipping away at authority is corrosive. The time has now surely come to insist that the referee will only deal and communicate with the captain, Doyle wrote in his Irish Times column. Unless, of course, the official himself wishes to talk to another player. This principle already exists within the laws of the game, yet Doyle believes it is applied inconsistently and has been undermined by modern habits that prioritize familiarity over authority. The problem with faux friendship, one of Doyle's more striking criticisms, relates to how referees address players on the field. In recent years, it has become common practice for officials to refer to players by their first names, a trend often justified as a way to build rapport and defuse tension. Doyle argues that this approach is fundamentally flawed. It is also time to drop the absurd faux friendship habit of calling players by their first name, he wrote. Captain or skipper would do nicely, with other players referenced by their number. In his view, the use of first names blurs the line of respectful authority that referees must maintain to control elite matches effectively. While mutual respect is essential, Doyle believes familiarity has tipped too far into informality, emboldening players to challenge officials in ways that would have been unthinkable in previous eras. Respect, he argues, is not about warmth or friendliness, but about clarity of roles. Referees cannot fix this alone. Perhaps Doyle's most important point is his insistence that referees themselves cannot be expected to solve the problem in isolation. While stricter enforcement and post-match sanctions play a role, they are reactive measures that address symptoms rather than causes. The way to call a halt to this unacceptable behavior does not, cannot, and must not rest solely in the hands of the referees and post-match tribunals, Doyle wrote. Instead, responsibility must be shared across the sport. Coaches, captains, senior players, unions, and clubs all have a part to play in setting standards and enforcing them internally before disciplinary panels are even required. Captains, in particular, must reclaim their role as intermediaries between referees and players. Coaches must reinforce expectations around behavior, not just tactics. Senior players must lead by example, understanding that their actions carry influence far beyond a single match, that a warning rooted in real consequences. Doyle's concerns are not theoretical. They are grounded in recent events that illustrate the real-world consequences of persistent abuse. Following Mack Hansen's outburst in December 2024, referee Chris Busby, the official at the center of the controversy, made the decision to retire from refereeing. Busby later spoke openly about his experience, citing a lack of genuine support from the IRFU as a key factor in his departure. For Doyle, that episode was deeply troubling. Here was a talented, experienced referee walking away from the game, not because of performance issues, but because the environment had become intolerable. In Busby's case, Doyle fears will not be the last if the current trajectory continues. In the aftermath of Aki's ban, attention has also turned to young referee Eoghan Cross, who found himself thrust into the spotlight after being subjected to criticism. Doyle worries that without clear, visible backing from governing bodies, referees like Cross may question whether the role is worth the scrutiny and abuse. The ripple effect beyond the professional game. One of Doyle's greatest fears is that behavior at the elite level inevitably filters down into grassroots rugby. What professional players say and do on television screens every weekend sets the tone for amateur, youth, and schools rugby. All participants need to get on board and understand the part they must play, Doyle warned. If they don't, it will all leak down into amateur and schools rugby. It is the old story about setting the right example. He argues that professionalism, rather than elevating standards of behavior, is currently exposing the sport's worst instincts. The pressure to win, the scrutiny of decision-making, and the stakes involved have combined to create an environment where dissent is normalized and sometimes even celebrated. That culture, Doyle insists, must be challenged before it becomes entrenched. A collective responsibility. Doyle's call to action is broad and uncompromising. World Rugby, national unions, provincial bodies, and clubs must all work together to confront the issue head-on. World Rugby, individual unions, provinces, and the clubs are all needed to address this question, he wrote. It's not invisible, it's happening right in front of us, and with a very worrying consistency too. That may involve stronger messaging, clearer protocols, harsher sanctions, or cultural resets within teams. But above all, it requires a shared understanding that referees are not obstacles to be overcome, but essential participants in the game. Why referees matter. Doyle is unequivocal about the value of elite referees. Good officials, he argues, are like gold dust, rare, highly skilled, and indispensable to the sport's credibility. Match officials are an integral part of the game, he wrote. Treating them with contempt will only ensure that intelligent, knowledgeable people will have no interest in the role. If abuse continues unchecked, Doyle fears the long-term consequences could be severe. The best potential referees may simply choose other paths, leaving the game with a shrinking pool of officials willing to endure the pressure, and that, he warns, would ultimately damage the quality of rugby itself. Failure to sort out this vital issue would see a totally different caliber of person taking up the job, Doyle concluded. Then, there'd really be something to shout about. A crossroads for the sport. Rugby now finds itself at a crossroads. The recent bans handed to Aki, Hansen, and Sexton suggest that authorities are willing to act, but Doyle's message is clear. Punishment alone is not enough. Without a cultural shift driven by leadership at every level, the cycle of abuse will continue, and the sport will pay the price for a game that prides itself on values of respect and integrity. The treatment of referees may prove to be the ultimate test of whether those values still truly matter.